30 neighbors ran through the storm toward one locked basement door. Behind that swollen wooden door, Evan was trapped completely alone. Most of the people outside barely even knew his name. Yet every one of them believed his life truly mattered. To understand why, we must return to the previous morning. Evan lived beneath the stairs of an aging apartment building. His tiny room contained nearly everything he still owned: a jacket, some tools, and one faded childhood photograph. That morning, he carefully counted the last coins in his jar. There was not enough money to survive another difficult week. Still, Evan wrapped his mustard yellow scarf around his neck. It was the one possession he would never consider selling. Years earlier, an unknown stranger had given it to him. Evan no longer remembered the stranger's face or voice. He only remembered how suddenly the world had felt safer. That small feeling quietly shaped the man Evan later became. He repaired broken objects at a tiny neighborhood workshop. But lately, fewer customers had been walking through the door. That morning, the owner closed the workshop for the final time. Without warning, Evan had lost his only source of income. He carried his tools home beneath a heavy gray sky. Each step felt more difficult than the one before it. Then he noticed Nora beside a damaged bus shelter. Her umbrella had turned completely inside out in the wind. The nearest safe building was several wet streets away. Evan looked at his umbrella and then looked at Nora. For him, the decision required almost no thought at all. He carefully placed the strong blue umbrella into her hands. Nora tried to refuse, pointing anxiously toward the cold rain. Evan only smiled and pulled his yellow scarf much tighter. Nora watched him disappear slowly down the shining wet street. Our minds remember people who make frightening moments feel smaller. Evan entered Mr. Chen's grocery store completely soaked and shivering. Mr. Chen offered him a towel and a cup of tea. Evan spent his final coins on bread and warm soup. It would be the only meal he could afford that day. Outside the store, he heard the sound of hunger. Mia sat beneath an awning, pretending she was perfectly fine. Her mother searched nearby shops, hoping to find temporary work. Mia smiled whenever Evan glanced gently in her direction. But hunger is difficult to hide from someone who knows it. Evan sat beside her and slowly opened his brown satchel. He divided the small loaf into two very unequal pieces. Then he quietly gave Mia the much larger half. She stared at the bread as though it were treasure. Evan also placed the warm bowl of soup into her hands. He claimed he had already eaten earlier at the workshop. Mia believed him, because true kindness often sounds completely ordinary. When Lena returned, she immediately understood what Evan had done. She thanked him, but Evan quickly changed the conversation. Quiet helpers rarely understand how many people are actually watching. Across the street, a delivery cart suddenly lost one wheel. Evan ignored his hunger and opened his old toolbox again. Within minutes, the damaged wheel was turning smoothly once more. The driver offered payment, but Evan politely refused the money. By afternoon, the steady rain had become much colder. His wet clothes clung heavily to his tired body. Even then, he stopped beside another familiar apartment doorway. Mr. Samuel's hallway lamp had stopped working once again. Evan repaired the broken lamp without waiting to be asked. Warm golden light returned to the lonely, narrow hallway. Samuel invited him inside, but Evan politely declined the offer. Sometimes lonely people offer company because they need it too. Evan finally reached his basement apartment shortly before sunset. Inside, the room felt colder than the street outside. His small heaters had stopped working during the previous night. He opened his toolbox, but his hands were already trembling. For the first time that day, Evan allowed himself to rest. Helping other people had not repaired his own painful problems. Kindness does not always create an immediate visible reward. Sometimes it leaves us wondering whether anybody even noticed. A small weather radio warned that a powerful storm was coming. Evan noticed rainwater collecting near the outside basement drain. If the drain stayed blocked, his entire room could flood. He returned outside carrying a shovel and a metal bucket. He worked alone while every nearby window slowly became dark. The storm suddenly knocked out power across the neighborhood. Wind pushed branches, paper, leaves, and mud toward the drain. Evan cleared one pile, but another immediately replaced it. Cold water was already rising around his soaked black shoes. Then a heavy branch crashed across the basement stairway. A violent gust slammed the wooden door shut behind him. Swollen by rain, the door could no longer be opened. Water began slipping underneath it and entering his tiny room. Evan shouted for help, but thunder swallowed every desperate word. His flashlight flickered weakly, then finally disappeared into darkness. For several seconds, he heard nothing except the rising water. Then someone suddenly struck the small window from outside. It was Mia, holding a tiny glowing battery-powered lantern. She recognized Evan because his yellow scarf glowed through the glass. Mia ran through the storm toward her mother and Mr. Chen. Mr. Chen remembered the soaked man who had shared his meal. The delivery worker remembered the stranger who repaired his cart. Samuel remembered the warm light returning to his lonely hallway. And Nora remembered the blue umbrella beside her front door. She opened that umbrella and stepped directly into the storm. Then she knocked urgently on every door along the street. She did not ask whether the neighbors personally knew Evan. She asked whether they could leave any person there alone. Within minutes, the empty street filled with glowing lanterns. People who had never spoken began working side by side. Mr. Chen organized a line to carry away the water. The delivery worker used his repaired cart to move the branch. Samuel wrapped warm blankets around the coldest rescue volunteers. Lena held the rope while Mia protected her small lantern. Nora stayed beside the window, speaking calmly to frightened Evan. Her voice reminded him that he was no longer alone. Together, the neighbors finally pulled the heavy branch aside. Several strong hands forced the swollen basement door wide open. Evan stepped outside into a wall of waiting faces. He could not understand why so many people had come. Then Mia placed her remaining piece of bread into his hands. Mr. Chen gave him a large bowl of steaming soup. Samuel welcomed everyone into his newly illuminated warm hallway. Small acts of kindness had created an invisible human network. Each person had received enough courage to help somebody else. Then Nora noticed the faded stitching on Evan's yellow scarf. Her late husband had sewn that same mark many years earlier. He was the stranger who once helped a frightened child. Kindness had returned, not as pain.